The memory is still crystal clear. My father was standing in our cramped kitchen, his face flushed with anger, pointing at the door as he shouted, "Go ahead and leave. You'll never make it in the real world. Mark my words, Tyler. You'll come crawling back within a month." I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. That was 7 years ago. I never crawled back. And last week my father called me, his voice smaller than I'd ever heard it, asking if he could move into one of my properties because he'd lost everything. Life has a way of coming full circle, in the most unexpected ways. Growing up in Oak Ridge, a small manufacturing town in Ohio, meant limited options and narrow horizons. My father, Richard Mason, worked at the local steel mill for 32 years. He started on the factory floor when he was 19 and eventually became a shift supervisor. The mill was his life, his identity, and the source of every life lesson he tried to impart to me. Hard, steady work at a good company is the only secure path in life. He'd lecture while we ate dinner. My mother would quietly nod in agreement, her eyes never leaving her plate. She'd been a bank teller until I was born, then became a stay-at-home mom and never returned to work. Their lives followed a predictable rhythm: work, home, TV, sleep, repeat. Vacations were rare, dreams were practical. Ambition was dangerous. I was their only child, and from an early age, I knew I wanted something different. While other kids in my neighborhood were playing video games or sports, I was selling lemonade, mowing lawns, and later, fixing computers for neighbors. By 16, I had saved enough to buy and restore an old Camaro, which I flipped for nearly double what I'd put into it. My father called it lucky timing. I called it the beginning. During my senior year of high school, when college applications were due, my father assumed I'd either join him at the mill or attend the local community college for a practical degree. Accounting, perhaps, or business administration. Something sensible that would lead to stable employment. Instead, I applied to study computer science at universities across the country. When the acceptance letters arrived, including one from a prestigious tech school in California with a partial scholarship, my father's reaction wasn't pride. It was fear masked as anger. "California? You're chasing pipe dreams now? That school will put you in debt for decades, and for what? So you can live in some overpriced shoebox apartment eating ramen while you try to invent the next Facebook?" It's not about inventing Facebook, Dad. It's about learning skills for the future, not the past. The moment those words left my mouth, I knew I'd crossed a line. My father's face hardened, the way it did when he felt disrespected. His voice dropped to a dangerous quiet. "The past, huh? You mean the work that put food on your table and clothes on your back? The stability that gave you the luxury to dream at all?" My mother tried to intervene. "Richard, he's just excited about his options. We should be—" "No, Linda, he needs to hear this. The real world isn't kind to dreamers. It's built by people who show up every day and do what needs to be done." We argued through dinner, then through the evening. By midnight, ultimatums were being thrown. He wouldn't waste a dime on a fantasy education. If I wanted to go to California, I'd do it without his support. The next morning, I walked downstairs with my decision made. I would accept the scholarship, work part-time, and take out loans for the rest. When I announced this at breakfast, my father's utensils clattered onto his plate. "Then you're on your own. Completely. I'm not subsidizing a mistake." My mother started crying. "Richard, please." "No, Linda. He needs to learn. Sometimes falling flat on your face is the only teacher that works." That's when he stood up, pointed to the door, and delivered those words I'd never forget. "Go ahead and leave. You'll never make it in the real world. Mark my words, Tyler. You'll come crawling back within a month." I moved out that week, crashed, with my best friend Jake until graduation, and flew to California 2 days after receiving my diploma. My mother slipped me $800 in cash and a tearful goodbye at the airport. My father didn't come. Those first months in California were exactly as difficult as my father predicted. My scholarship covered tuition, but little else. I shared a 2-bedroom apartment with 3 other students in a neighborhood that made our home in Ohio look luxurious. I worked 20 hours a week at the campus tech support center, another 15 doing freelance web design, and still barely made rent. Ramen featured prominently in my diet. 6 weeks in, during a particularly rough night when I'd failed a coding assignment and lost a potential client, I sat on my mattress on the floor and stared at my phone. My father's prediction echoed, "You'll come crawling back within a month." I was already 2 weeks past his deadline, but just barely hanging on. I called my mother instead. "How are you doing, sweetie?" She tried to sound cheerful, but I could hear the worry. "I'm fine, Mom. Just checking in." A pause. "Your father asks about you." "Does he?" "In his way. He looks at your empty chair at dinner sometimes." I changed the subject, asked about her garden, her book club, anything but my struggles or my father's disappointment. After we hung up, I made a decision. I would not fail. Not because I needed to prove my father wrong, but because I needed to prove to myself that I'd made the right choice. The next day, I approached one of my professors after class. Professor Jenkins was a former Silicon Valley executive who taught programming as a retirement hobby. I asked him for extra coaching, for connections, for any edge I could get. "You have raw talent," he told me after reviewing some of my work. "But you need focus." Under his mentorship, I narrowed my freelance services to specifically target small e-commerce businesses needing custom solutions. By the end of my freshman year, I had 5 regular clients and had moved to a slightly better apartment with only 2 roommates. I was sleeping 4 hours a night, but I was surviving. Sophomore year brought an unexpected opportunity. One of my clients, a boutique surf apparel company, was acquired by a larger brand. The new owners were impressed with the inventory management system I'd built and offered me a summer internship. That internship led to part-time work during the school year. And by junior year, they were paying me enough that I could drop my other clients and focus on school and this one job. I hadn't been home to Ohio once. My mother visited twice, staying in a cheap motel nearby because I was too embarrassed to have her see my living conditions. She brought care packages and news from home. The mill was struggling. Layoffs had started. My father's position seemed secure for now, but the town was changing. "He's too proud to say it," my mother confided during her second visit. "But I think he worries about you. He has a funny way of showing it. You're more alike than either of you realize. Stubborn as mules, both of you." I didn't call home for Christmas my junior year. Instead, I accepted an invitation to spend the holiday with my roommate's family in Seattle. I told myself it was because I couldn't afford the flight to Ohio, but the truth was, I wasn't ready to face my father. Not until I had something concrete to show for my choice. That something concrete came faster than I expected. 2 months before graduation, the company I worked for offered me a full-time position with stock options. The salary was 3 times what my father made after 30 years at the mill. I signed the contract and sent a copy to my mother. She called me in tears. "I'm so proud of you, Tyler." "Is Dad there?" I asked, a pause. "He's working late. Things are tense at the mill. More layoffs are coming." "Will you show him the contract?" "Of course, honey." 2 days later, she called back. "Your father saw your job offer." "And?" He said, "Good for him." Her voice suggested there was more, but whatever else my father had said, she was keeping it to herself. I graduated with honors. My mother flew out alone. My father was needed at the mill for an emergency situation. I acted like it didn't matter, but it did. Even with my success, even with everything I'd accomplished, some part of me still craved his approval. Next year flew by in a blur of work and ambition. The company expanded rapidly, and with it, my responsibilities and compensation. I moved to a one-bedroom apartment in a doorman building. I bought new furniture, nice clothes, a car. I started dating Olivia, a UX designer at a neighboring tech company. Life was good by any objective measure. Then came the call that changed everything. My mother, her voice shaking, told me that the mill was closing. Permanently. 300 workers would lose their jobs. My father is among them. He's putting on a brave face, she said. Says he'll find something else. But Tyler, he's 57. He's never worked anywhere else. How are you doing for money? I asked. We have some savings. The house is paid off. We'll manage for a while. I sent them $5,000 the next day. My mother called to thank me. My father never mentioned it. 6 months later, my company was acquired by a tech giant. My stock options vested immediately. At 24, I was worth over $2 million. The first thing I did was pay off my student loans. The second was to call a real estate agent. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. I'd like to purchase an investment property, I told her. Something in a stable market with growth potential. She helped me find a 3-bedroom house in a suburb outside Denver. The mortgage was easily covered by my salary, and the area was appreciating rapidly. I hired a property management company and found tenants within weeks. Around this time, I finally visited Ohio. It had been almost 5 years since I'd left home. Oak Ridge looked smaller, grayer than I remembered. Many storefronts on Main Street were boarded up. The mill, once the beating heart of the town, stood silent and rusting. My childhood home, a modest 3-bedroom ranch, needed paint and repairs. Inside, things were tidier but showed signs of wear. My mother embraced me in the driveway, crying happy tears. My father shook my hand formally in the living room, as if I were a business associate rather than his son. "You're looking well," he said, eyeing my tailored clothes and the rental car in the driveway, a new BMW that had been the only option at the airport. "Thanks, Dad. You too." It wasn't entirely true. He'd aged considerably. His hair was fully gray now, his posture slightly stooped. There were lines around his eyes that spoke of worry rather than laughter. At dinner, my mother did most of the talking, filling the silences with updates about neighbors and relatives. My father picked at his food, occasionally asking perfunctory questions about the tech business, as if it were a single entity I could summarize in a sentence. Later, when my mother was doing dishes, we sat awkwardly in the living room. "Have you found any work?" I finally asked. His jaw tightened. "Some consulting, safety procedures for factories. It's sporadic." "That's good. Using your experience. Not the same as real work." He gestured vaguely at the TV, where a news program was discussing the decline of American manufacturing. "They're saying these jobs are never coming back, that we need to retrain for the digital economy." He said the phrase with undisguised contempt. "There are opportunities at my age? Don't patronize me, Tyler." We sat in silence after that. I left the next day, promising my mother I'd visit more often. I didn't make any promises to my father. Back in California, life continued its upward trajectory. I was promoted twice in 18 months. Olivia and I moved in together. The Denver property appreciated by 15% in its first year, so I bought a second investment property, this time in Austin, Texas, another booming tech hub. Meanwhile, the updates from Ohio grew increasingly concerning. My father couldn't find steady work. They were dipping into their retirement savings. My mother had taken a part-time job at the local library to help with expenses, but it wasn't enough. I sent money when I could, always through my mother, who accepted it with gratitude. I suspected my father never knew. Then came the heart attack. Mild, the doctor said, but a warning. My father needed to reduce stress, improve his diet, exercise more. I flew home immediately and found my mother distraught, not just about his health, but about their future. "The medical bills, Tyler," she whispered in the hospital corridor while my father slept. "We don't have supplemental insurance. Medicare doesn't cover everything." "I'll take care of it," I assured her. My father was discharged 3 days later. At home, when I tried to discuss financial arrangements, he shut down the conversation. "I don't need charity." "It's not charity, Dad. It's family." Easy to say when you're the one with the money. I stayed a week, helping my mother, trying to connect with my father, who alternated between sullen silence and bursts of bitter commentary about the state of the country, the economy, the loss of real work. Before I left, I set up automatic transfers to my mother's personal account, enough to cover the medical bills and provide a cushion. 2 months after returning to California, I closed on my third property, a small but elegant house in Nashville, chosen because the music industry was bringing steady growth to the city. 3 houses before my 26th birthday. I celebrated by taking Olivia to a fancy dinner and mentioning, casually, that I was thinking of proposing soon. Life seemed perfect, until the phone call that changed everything. It was my father's voice on the line. Something so rare I almost didn't recognize it at first. He sounded different, subdued, almost humble. "Tyler," he said, "we need to talk. We need to talk." 4. Simple words that carried the weight of years of strained silence and pride. I sat down on the edge of my ergonomic office chair, the San Francisco skyline visible through floor-to-ceiling windows behind me. "I'm listening, Dad." A long exhale. On the other end of the line. "Your mother didn't want me to call you. Said we should figure this out ourselves." The knot in my stomach tightened. "Figure out what?" "We lost the house." The statement hung in the air between us. 3,000 miles of distance suddenly compressed into nothing. I could picture him, sitting at the kitchen table where I'd eaten breakfast every morning for 18 years, perhaps clutching the same chipped mug he'd always used for his black coffee. "What do you mean, lost it? I thought it paid off." "It was, but after the medical bills, we took out a reverse mortgage. Thought it would tide us over until—" He cleared his throat. "Until I could find something steady again." I closed my eyes, trying to process this. "Why didn't you tell me things were that bad?" "You've got your own life, your own problems." "I've been sending Mom money," I said, a defensive edge creeping into my voice. "And you think I didn't know?" His voice rose briefly, then settled. "Your mother's not great at keeping secrets. But that money, it wasn't enough. Not with the way healthcare costs are. And I couldn't ask you for more." Pride. Always the damn pride. "So what happens now?" "Bank gave us 60 days. After that, I don't know." I thought about my parents, approaching 60, suddenly without a home. About my mother's small garden in the backyard where she grew tomatoes every summer. About my father's workshop in the garage where he'd taught me to change oil and replace spark plugs. "You could sell one of those fancy houses you bought," my father suggested, attempting a joke that fell flat. "I hear you've got 3 now." So my mother had told him about that too. "They're investments, Dad. They're rented out. They generate income. Must be nice." The old resentment flickered in his tone, and for a moment I was tempted to hang up. To tell him I'd worked for everything I had while he'd chosen the security of the mill, until that security vanished. But the image of my parents packing up their life into cardboard boxes stopped me. "The Nashville property," I said slowly. "It's the newest. Just finished renovations last month. The tenant isn't moving in until next quarter." Silence on the other end. "It's a nice place. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, Good neighborhood. Close to medical facilities. I paused. You and Mom could stay there. Until you figure things out. More silence than, you'd do that? The surprise in his voice hurt more than any argument we'd ever had. Did he really think I'd let them end up homeless? That I'd abandon them after? Everything they'd done for me, even if my father and I hadn't seen eye to eye? Of course I would. You're my parents. We can't pay much rent, he said quickly. Not until I find no rent, I cut him off. You'd be doing me a favor, actually. Having someone there to keep an eye on the place until the tenant moves in. This was a lie, and I suspected he knew it, but it gave him a way to accept without feeling like a charity case. Just until we get back on our feet, he said firmly. Sure, Dad. Just until then. After we hung up, I sat staring at my phone for a long time. Olivia found me like that when she came home from work, still in my office chair, gazing out at the darkening city skyline. Bad day? She asked, setting down her laptop bag. I told her about the call, about my parents losing their home, about offering them the Nashville house. She wrapped her arms around my shoulders from behind. You did the right thing. Family is family. I know. It's just complicated. Your dad's a proud man. This can't be easy for him. No, it's not. I turned to face her. I need to go to Nashville, help them get settled. Of course, she said without hesitation. Do you want me to come with you? I considered this. Olivia had met my parents only once, during a brief, awkward dinner when they'd visited San Francisco. My father had spent most of the meals staring uncomfortably at the prices on the menu. Maybe not this time, I said gently. Let me get them, situated first. She nodded, understanding. When are they moving in? I'm not sure yet. Soon, I guess. Dad said they have 60 days, but I don't think they want to wait until the last minute. 2 weeks later, I flew to Ohio, rented a moving truck, and helped my parents pack up 35 years of life in the house where I grew up. My mother cried over photo albums and kitchen gadgets with memories attached. My father worked silently, methodically boxing tools and books and the few pieces of furniture worth keeping. We're donating most of it, my mother explained as we wrapped plates in newspaper. Starting fresh. My father overheard this. Starting over, you mean? At our age. Richard, please, my mother said softly. Tyler's trying to help. He nodded curtly and returned to his packing. The drive to Nashville took 9 hours. My parents followed the moving truck in their aging sedan. We stopped twice for meals at roadside diners, making stilted conversation about the changing landscape, the weather, anything but what was really happening. The Nashville house was in a quiet neighborhood east of the city. Modern but not flashy, with a small yard and a covered porch. The kind of place where retired couples put out rocking chairs and watch the world go by. I'd purchased it as an investment, but seeing my parents pull into the driveway behind me, I realized it looked like the kind of home they might have chosen for themselves, had life gone differently. My father stood in the driveway, taking in the house, the neat shrubs, the fresh paint. His expression was unreadable. It's beautiful, Tyler, my mother said, squeezing my arm. Just beautiful. We spent the day unloading the truck and arranging furniture. By evening, the essential rooms, kitchen, bedroom, bathroom, were functional, if not fully settled. We ordered pizza and ate it around the kitchen island because the dining table wasn't assembled yet. The market's good here, I said, trying to fill the silence. Lots of healthcare jobs, music industry, publishing. My father took a sip of his beer. For people with those skills, there are opportunities in property management, he interrupted. I could help with your houses, maintenance, tenant issues. I'm good with my hands. The offer surprised me. That's actually not a bad idea. Don't sound so shocked. He almost smiled. I managed 50 men at the mill. I can handle a leaky faucet. It was the closest thing to enthusiasm I'd heard from him in years. We could set something up. Maybe start with this place and the one in Austin. My mother beamed at us, relief softening, the tension lines that had appeared around her eyes in recent years. For the first time since I'd arrived in Ohio, I felt like maybe this could work. I stayed 3 more days, helping them settle in. My father and I developed a tentative rhythm, working side by side on small projects around the house. We weren't quite comfortable, but we weren't arguing either. Progress. Before I left, I sat down with them at the now-assembled dining table to discuss finances. I'd created a document outlining what I'd cover: utilities, property taxes, maintenance, and what they'd need to handle: groceries, personal expenses. And your job would be maintaining the property, I told my father. I'll pay you a monthly stipend for that. It's what I'd pay anyone else doing the work. He studied the paper. This stipend, it's too much. It's market rate. For Nashville? I nodded, even though it was actually about 20% above market rate. He didn't need to know that. And just so we're clear, I added, this arrangement isn't temporary unless you want it to be. You can stay as long as you need. Or want. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Tyler, we can't thank you enough. My father stared at the document, his jaw working. Finally, he looked up. I didn't see this coming, any of it. The mill is closing, the health problems, ending up. He gestured around. Here. Life takes unexpected turns, I said. Yeah. He met my eyes directly. When you left for California, I was sure you were making a mistake, that you'd come back with your tail between your legs when reality hit. I waited, unsure where this was going. I didn't understand the world was changing, that the security I'd known was already disappearing. He folded the paper carefully. You saw it before I did. Made different choices. It wasn't quite an apology, and it wasn't quite an admission that I'd been right. But coming from my father, it was monumental. I was lucky, I said. Right place, right time. No. He shook his head firmly. Luck is winning the lottery. You built something, made smart decisions, worked hard. A pause. I was wrong about you, Tyler. The words I'd waited years to hear. I swallowed hard, surprised by the emotion tightening. My throat. Thanks, Dad. We left it at that. Some wounds are too deep to heal all at once. But it was a beginning. Back in San Francisco, I threw myself into work. The acquisition had led to new responsibilities, including leading a team developing a major product feature. Olivia and I got engaged. Life moved forward at its relentless pace. I called my parents weekly. The conversations were mostly with my mother, but occasionally my father would get on the line to give updates about the house, a fence he'd repaired, a water heater he'd replaced, a garden he'd started for my mother in the backyard. 4 months after they moved in, he called me directly. The couple next door, he said without preamble. Their son just graduated from college, engineering degree. Smart kid, but he can't find work. I told him you might have some advice. Sure, I said, surprised. Have him email me his resume. All ready. Sent it. To your personal email. I checked later and found not only the resume, but a note from my father explaining the young man's situation and skills in detail. He'd become an advocate, a connector. It was a side of him I'd never seen. Soon after, he called about the Austin property. That management company you hired? They're not checking the gutters regularly. Place'll get water damage if they don't. Stay on top of it. How do you know about the gutters in Austin? I set up video calls with your tenants, check-ins, just to make sure everything's running smoothly. That's okay? It was more than okay. It was impressive. My father was reinventing himself at 58, leveraging his management experience in a completely new context. And he was good at it. By the 6-month mark, he'd essentially taken over management of both properties, documenting everything meticulously, sending me weekly reports. The tenants loved him. He was responsive, knowledgeable, and had the perfect balance of friendliness and professionalism. I doubled his stipend without telling him it was a raise, simply saying I'd recalculated the market rate. My mother flourished, too. She joined a book club, volunteered at the local elementary school, made friends with neighbors. Her voice on our calls was lighter, happier than I'd heard it in years. "Your father's different here," she told me during one of our conversations. "It's like he's shed a weight he didn't know he was carrying." "The mill," I suggested. "Maybe. Or maybe just the idea that there's only one right way to live a life." Around the 8-month mark, I flew to Nashville for a long weekend. Olivia came with me this time, eager to see the changes my parents had made to the house and to show off her engagement ring in person. The transformation was remarkable. The house had gone from a nicely staged property to a real home. There were family photos on the walls, including several of me that I'd forgotten existed. The backyard now featured raised garden beds where my mother grew not just tomatoes, but a variety of vegetables. My father had built a small workshop in the garage that rivaled his old one in Ohio. More striking was the change in my parents themselves. They looked younger, more energetic. My father had lost weight, started taking daily walks. My mother had joined a yoga class for seniors. They'd made friends in the neighborhood, evident when 2 couples stopped by during our visit, bringing dishes for an impromptu dinner party. On Saturday morning, my father invited me to join him on his walk. We strolled through the neighborhood in the early light, nodding to other early risers out with their dogs or jogging. "How's the engagement going?" he asked. "Set a date yet?" "Spring. Next year, probably. We're thinking of a small ceremony." He nodded. "Your mother's already planning what she'll wear." We walked in comfortable silence for a while. "I've been thinking," he said finally, "about buying a place here." I stopped walking. "What?" "Not right away, but eventually. This feels like home now. We have friends. Your mother loves her garden. And He looked slightly embarrassed. "I've started taking classes at the community college. Business management." "Dad." "That's fantastic," he shrugged. "Never too old to learn, right? That's what you've been trying to tell me." "The Nashville house is yours for as long as you want it," I reminded him. "I know. And we appreciate that. But there's something about owning your own place." He glanced at me. "You understand that better than most." I did. My real estate investments weren't just about financial returns. There was something deeply satisfying about owning property, about having tangible assets in a world that increasingly valued the digital and ephemeral. "I've been saving," he continued, "from the stipend, and I've got a lead on a job with a property management company here. Real job, not just looking after your houses." Pride swelled in my chest. "That's really great, Dad." "It's because of you," he said quietly. "You gave us a chance when we needed it most. You'd have done the same for me." He stopped walking. "Would I? I'm not so sure. When you left for California, I was so angry I could barely see straight. Felt like you were rejecting everything I stood for, everything I'd tried to teach you." "I wasn't rejecting you," I said, "just choosing a different path." "I know that now." He started walking again. Took me long enough to figure it out. We completed the loop back to the house in thoughtful silence. As we approached the driveway, he said, "Know what I think about sometimes? That moment in our kitchen when I told you that you'd never make it, that you'd come crawling back." I tensed slightly. "What about it?" "I think about how sure I was, how absolutely certain that there was only one way to succeed in life." He shook his head. "And then I think about how I ended up being the one asking to move into your house." "Dad, you didn't crawl back. This is different." "Is it?" He looked at me, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time as an equal. Life's got a sense of humor, doesn't it? But here's the thing. I'm grateful, not just for the house, but for you showing me there's more than one way to build a good life. We stood in the driveway, the morning sun warming our shoulders. Wow. Father extended his hand, and when I took it, he pulled me into an embrace. It was brief but firm, the kind of hug that says everything that words cannot. As we walked into the house where the smell of coffee and something baking greeted us, I realized that success isn't always what we imagine it will be. Sometimes it's measured in square footage or bank balances, but sometimes, perhaps more importantly, it's measured in the bridges we build back to the people who matter most, even when we have to cross them from unexpected directions. Returning to San Francisco after that visit felt different. The city's familiar buzz, the tech campuses, the startups, the constant innovation, now seemed part of a larger picture rather than my entire world. I'd built a successful life here, but reconnecting with my parents had shifted something fundamental in my perspective. "You seem lighter," Olivia observed one evening as we walked along the Embarcadero, the Bay Bridge glittering against the night sky. "More at peace." "I think I am," I admitted. "Seeing my dad change, watching him rebuild. It's not something I expected." She squeezed my hand. "Family reconciliations are rare and precious. Most people never get there." "We still have our moments," I laughed. "He called yesterday to tell me the landscaper I hired for the Austin property is overcharging by at least 20%. "And is he?" "Probably. Dad's frighteningly thorough about these things now." As we planned our wedding over the following months, my parents became increasingly involved. My mother helping Olivia choose floral arrangements via video calls. My father unexpectedly offering advice about venue contracts. "Always check the cancellation clauses," he insisted, "and get the service guarantees in writing." His business classes were paying off in unexpected ways. 3 weeks before the wedding, my boss called me into his office. Janet Pierce was the kind of tech executive who inspired both terror and devotion. Brilliant, demanding, and occasionally kind in ways that caught you off guard. "Sit down, Tyler," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. The wall behind her was glass, offering a panoramic view of the city. "I'll get straight to the point. We're opening a satellite office in Nashville." My heart jumped. "Nashville?" "The music industry is digitizing rapidly. Plus, tax incentives, lower cost of living, growing tech scene." She tilted her head. "Your father lives there now, doesn't he?" "He does. In one of my properties." "That's right." She smiled slightly. "The houses. Smart investments." I waited, unsure where this was going. "We need someone to head up the Nashville office. Someone who understands our culture but can build something with its own identity. 3-year commitment minimum." She slid a folder across the desk. "Details are in there. Salary bump, equity adjustment, relocation package. Take a few days to think about it." I opened the folder. The numbers made my eyes widen. "This is generous." "It's appropriate for the responsibility." She leaned forward. "This isn't a request to consider lightly. You'd be building something from the ground up. Different challenges than what you've faced here." "I understand. Talk to Olivia. This affects her too." I nodded, my mind already racing ahead. Nashville. Close to my parents. A new challenge professionally. A chance to build something. "One more thing," Janet added, as I stood to leave. "If you take this, you'd report directly to me. I'll be overseeing the expansion remotely." A vote of confidence from one of the most respected executives in the company. "Thank you for considering me. You earned it. Now go decide if it's what you want." I didn't tell Olivia immediately. The timing was complicated with the wedding approaching, and I needed to sort through my own thoughts first. Moving to Nashville would mean leaving behind the city where we'd built our life together, where her career was flourishing. We'd discussed children recently, agreeing we wanted to start trying soon after the wedding. How would this affect those plans? That evening, as Olivia worked late finishing a design project, I called my mother. The company's opening an office in Nashville, I said after our usual pleasantries. They've asked me to run it. Her intake of breath was audible. Oh, Tyler, that would mean we'd move there, yes. Have you told Olivia? Not yet. I'm trying to figure out how I feel about it first. A pause. And how do you feel? I considered the question. Excited, nervous, conflicted. Because of Olivia's job? Partly. She loves her team, her projects, and San Francisco is home for us. But? My mother had always been perceptive, but Nashville feels like an opportunity, not just professionally, for us as a family. You want your children to know their grandparents, she said softly. The thought had been forming in my mind, but hearing her say it made it real. Yes, I do. That's a beautiful thing, Tyler. But marriage is a partnership. Whatever you decide together. After we hung up, I sat on our balcony watching the fog roll in through the Golden Gate. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. Call me when you have a minute. Need advice about thermal insulation for the Austin house. I smiled. Our relationship had evolved into something I'd never imagined possible. A collaboration, a mutual respect. The idea of living closer, of building on that foundation, of my future children having my father as a real presence in their lives rather than a distant figure they saw on holidays. It was compelling. When Olivia came home, I had dinner waiting, takeout from her favorite Thai restaurant, and the folder from Janet on the coffee table. What's this? She asked, picking it up after we'd eaten. I took a deep breath. An opportunity and a big decision for us to make together. Her expression as she read through the documents shifted from surprise to concentration to something more complex. When she looked up, her eyes were thoughtful. Nashville. Yes. Running a new office. Yes. She set the folder down carefully. This is a huge opportunity for you. For us, I corrected. Or not. It depends on what we want. What do you want? She asked directly. I told her everything. My complicated feelings, the professional challenge, the appeal of being near my parents as we started our own family. But your career matters too, I finished. Your happiness matters. If you don't want this, we stay. Simple as that. She was quiet for a long moment. My company has an office in Nashville too, you know. Smaller than the San Francisco headquarters, but growing. I could request a transfer. Hope flared. You could? I've been thinking about a change anyway. The team dynamic has shifted since the latest reorganization. She picked up her wine glass, swirling the liquid thoughtfully. And I like the idea of our kids having grandparents nearby. You do? Her smile was gentle. Tyler, I've seen how much healing has happened between you and your dad. That's rare and valuable, and selfishly, having built-in babysitters would be amazing. So you're saying? I'm saying let's consider it seriously. Visit Nashville together. Not just to see your parents, but to look at neighborhoods, visit my company's office there, get a feel for the city as our potential home. She took my hand. This might be the right move for our family. All of our family. The wedding came first, a beautiful ceremony at a vineyard north of the city, with 70 guests, including my parents. My father, uncomfortable in his rented tuxedo but beaming with unmistakable pride, gave a brief but heartfelt toast that left few dry eyes in the room. To my son and his bride, he said, raising his glass with a slightly trembling hand, who remind an old man that the best paths in life are often the ones we didn't see coming. 2 months after the wedding, we flew to Nashville for a week of exploration. We toured neighborhoods, met with real estate agents, visited our respective company offices. Olivia's transfer was approved with surprising enthusiasm. Apparently her reputation had preceded her. We had dinner with my parents 3 times. the conversation flowing easily among the four of us in a way that still felt miraculous to me. On our last night, sitting on the porch of my parents' house, no, their house now, in my mind, if not legally, my father brought out a folder of his own. "Found these properties," he said, pushing it toward me. "All good investment opportunities in the area. Growing neighborhoods, solid construction, good rental potential." I flipped through the listings he'd compiled, complete with market analyses, projected returns, and detailed notes about each property's condition and location advantages. "This is impressive, Dad," he shrugged, but I could see he was pleased. "The business classes helped. Plus, I've been talking to real estate investors here, learning the market." "You're building a network," I observed. "That's what you call it in the tech world, right? Networking?" He smiled. "Used to call it making friends in the industry." "Same thing, different terminology." Olivia joined us, carrying glasses of lemonade my mother had made. "What are you two plotting now?" "Property empire expansion," I told her, accepting a glass. "Dad's found some interesting opportunities." "Speaking of which," my father said, pulling out another paper from his folder, "I've been meaning to show you this. It was a pre-approval letter from a mortgage company. My parents had been approved for a loan to purchase their own home." "That's fantastic," I said, genuinely thrilled for them. "Have you found a place you like?" My parents exchanged a look. "We have," my mother said, joining us on the porch. "But we wanted to talk to you about it first." "Why? You don't need my permission." My father cleared his throat. "The thing is, we like where we are. This house, this neighborhood, we've made it our home." I stared at him, not immediately understanding. "You want to buy this house? My Nashville property?" "If you're willing to sell it to us," my mother said quickly. "At fair market value, of course. We wouldn't expect a discount, though I suspected they couldn't afford the current market value without significant financial strain." "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll think about it," my father suggested. "No pressure. We understand if you want to keep it as an investment." Later that night, in our hotel room, Olivia and I discussed the unexpected request. "What are you thinking?" she asked as we packed our suitcases for the return flight. "I'm thinking about what that house means to them," I said. "It's where they rebuilt their lives, where Dad found a new purpose, and what it means to you." I paused, a folded shirt in my hands. It's the place where my relationship with my father healed, where I saw him become a different person, or maybe the person he always could have been, if circumstances had been different. So I think I want them to have it, not at market value, they can't afford that, but at a price that makes sense for everyone, she smiled. "I thought you might say that." 2 weeks after returning to San Francisco, we made our decision. We would move to Nashville. I would accept the position leading the new office. Olivia would transfer to her company's Nashville location, and we would begin house hunting immediately. I called my parents to share our news. After the initial excitement, "And congratulations," I broached the subject of their home purchase. "About the Nashville house," I said. "I've given it some thought." "Tyler, there's no pressure," my mother assured me. "We can find something else." "I want to sell it to you," I continued, "but not at market value." My father's voice turned cautious. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting a fair price that works for everyone. You've put work into the house, increased its value. You've managed my properties and saved me money on management fees. I want to account for all of that." "We don't want charity," my father said, the old pride creeping into his voice. "It's not charity, it's business." I knew exactly how to frame this for him now. A recognition of the value you've added. And frankly, it makes financial sense for me. I avoid capital gains tax on some of the appreciation, and I'm able to invest in a new primary residence for us when we move there. He was quiet, considering this. Think of it as a win-win, I added. The kind of deal any smart businessman would make. Finally, he chuckled. Using my own lessons against me, huh? Learning from the best. We worked out terms that respected his pride while still being genuinely affordable for them. My father insisted on handling all the paperwork himself. To learn the process, he claimed, though I suspected it was also about maintaining a sense of agency in the transaction. The next 3 months passed in a whirlwind of preparations. We sold our San Francisco condo for a healthy profit. I wrapped up projects and trained my replacement. Olivia negotiated a flexible arrangement with her company that would allow her to split time between home and office work. We found a beautiful house in Nashville, just 15 minutes from my parents', with a yard large enough for children to play in someday. Moving day arrived on a crisp autumn morning. The Nashville sky was a perfect blue as the moving truck pulled up to our new home. My parents were waiting in the driveway, my mother with a basket of homemade muffins, my father with a toolbox, just in case. As the movers began unloading, my father approached me, hands in his pockets. "Got something to show you," he said, nodding toward his car. "When you have a minute." I followed him, curious. He opened the trunk and pulled out a wooden case, roughly the size of a large briefcase. "Made this," he said, handing it to me, "in the workshop." The case was beautiful. Cherry wood, hand-polished to a soft glow, with intricate joinery at the corners. My name was inlaid in maple on the lid. "Open it," he urged. Inside, nestled in velvet, was a set of tools. Not just any tools. High-quality, professional-grade implements arranged with perfect precision. Some were clearly new, others well-maintained classics. "My father gave me my first tools when I started at the mill," he explained, his voice gruff, with emotion. "Thought it was time to pass some on to you, for your new house, new beginning." I ran my fingers over a hammer with a worn handle. "Is this—" "My grandfather's, yes. 4 generations now." He cleared his throat. "Plus some new ones, for the jobs they didn't have tools back then." The symbolism wasn't lost on me. Old and new together, tradition meeting innovation. My father's acknowledgement that both had value, that both were necessary. "Dad, this is—" Words failed me. "Thank you." He nodded, uncomfortable with the emotion of the moment, but committed to seeing it through. "You know, when you left for California, I thought you were rejecting everything I tried to teach you, all my values." "I wasn't—" "I know that now," he interrupted gently. "You took the most important lessons, work ethic, responsibility, planning for the future, and applied them to a changing world. One I couldn't see coming." He gestured to the house, the moving truck, the new life unfolding around us. "You built something good, Tyler. Something solid." "So did you," I reminded him. "Your whole career at the mill? The family you raised?" "Yeah." He looked toward the house where Olivia and my mother were deep in conversation, probably discussing furniture, placement, or paint colors. But the best things I built might be still ahead of me. I thought about the property management job he'd secured, the classes he was still taking, the client network he was building. About the grandfather he would soon become, if Olivia's secretive smile over her declined glass of wine at dinner last night meant what I thought it did. "For both of us," I said, closing the tool case carefully. "The best things are still ahead." He clapped my shoulder, and together we walked toward our new home. Not as father and son exactly, but as 2 men who had found their way back to each other by traveling different paths than either could have imagined. Sometimes the real world turns out to be bigger, more forgiving, and more full of second chances than we ever dared to hope. Spring arrived in Nashville with an explosion of color. Dogwoods and redbuds lined the streets, azaleas bloomed in riotous clusters, and the scent of magnolia filled the air. Our new home, a craftsman-style house in a leafy neighborhood, was slowly taking shape as we made it our own, painting walls, replacing fixtures, and planning a backyard that would accommodate both entertaining and a play area. The play area had taken on new urgency since Olivia's pregnancy was confirmed. We were expecting a daughter in late August, a fact that had transformed my parents in ways I hadn't anticipated. My mother immediately began knitting tiny garments. My father, more surprisingly, started sketching plans for a handcrafted crib. "Thought I might make it in the workshop," he said casually one Sunday afternoon as we grilled in the backyard. "If that's something you'd want, you can do that?" I asked, genuinely impressed. He looked mildly offended. "I built half the furniture in our house growing up. Remember that desk in your room?" I did remember. A solid oak desk with dovetailed drawers. That never stuck, even in humid Ohio summers. I guess I never thought about it. That desk was always just there. "Made it when your mother was pregnant with you." He flipped a burger with practiced ease. "Figured you'd need a place to do homework someday." The thought of my father, younger than I was now, planning for my future before I was even born, created a lump in my throat. "I'd love for you to make the crib, Dad." He nodded, pleased. "Already ordered the cherry wood, special non-toxic finish that's safe for babies." Of course he had. The Nashville office was taking shape too. I'd hired a team of 20 so far, a mix of transfers from San Francisco and local talent. Our temporary space in a downtown co-working facility would serve until the permanent office, currently under renovation in a converted warehouse in the Gulch, was ready in July. The work was challenging in exactly the ways I'd hoped. Building something from the ground up required different skills than managing established teams and projects. I was setting culture, establishing processes, making decisions that would shape the office's identity for years to come. It was exhilarating and occasionally terrifying. Olivia was thriving as well. Her company had been so impressed with her work that they'd expanded her role to include design leadership for their southeastern clients. She'd converted one of our spare bedrooms into a stunning home office where she could work 3 days a week while going into their Nashville office for the other 2. "This balance feels right," she told me one evening as we relaxed on our front porch swing. "I can build my career and still have flexibility when the baby comes." The baby. Our daughter. Still abstract despite the sonogram images on our refrigerator and the slight curve now visible beneath Olivia's flowing tops. We were going to be parents. The thought alternately filled me with joy and terror. "Do you think we're ready?" I asked, voicing the fear that occasionally kept me awake at night. Olivia laughed. "Is anyone ever really ready? We've read the books, we've taken the classes, we've painted the nursery. The rest we'll figure out as we go. Like our parents did." "Exactly. And we turned out okay. Better than okay," I thought, looking around at the life we'd built. My phone buzzed with an email notification, another property lead from my father, who had become something of an unofficial real estate advisor since our move. His evolution continued to amaze me. At 60, he'd not only secured the property management position, but had quickly become one of the firm's most valuable employees. His meticulous attention to detail, practical knowledge of home systems, and surprisingly deft handling of tenant relations had earned him a reputation across the company. He'd completed his business management certificate and was now taking additional courses in real estate investment. More importantly, he'd developed a network of friends and colleagues who respected him for his current knowledge and skills rather than his past at the mill. The anger and bitterness that had defined him after the layoff had faded, replaced by a quiet confidence and openness to new experiences. One Tuesday evening, he called with news. "Got promoted today," he said without preamble. "Senior property manager, overseeing the high-value portfolio now." "Dad, that's fantastic. Congratulations." "Comes with a raise and a team, 2 junior managers reporting to me." The pride in his voice was unmistakable. "You've earned it. I've seen how hard you've worked." "Different kind of work than I was used to. But I like it." He paused. "Your mother's planning a dinner to celebrate. Sunday at 6. She's making a pot roast. We'll be there. Want us to bring anything? Just yourselves. Another pause. And maybe those blueprints for the garden irrigation system you mentioned. Been thinking about installing something similar. Always practical, my father. Even celebrations involved project planning. Sunday dinner became a regular tradition, sometimes at their house, sometimes at ours. On a warm June evening, as we lingered over coffee and my mother's homemade cherry pie, my father cleared his throat in the way that signaled he had something important to say. I've been thinking, he began, about starting a small business. This was unexpected. What kind of business? Property investment and management consulting. He outlined his idea, a boutique firm that would help people like his younger self, workers displaced from traditional industries, retirees looking for sustainable income, young professionals wanting to build wealth, navigate the real estate market. Not everyone has the resources you did starting out, he explained. But with the right guidance, ordinary people can build security through smart property investments. It's a great concept, I said, genuinely impressed. There's definitely a market for it. That's what my research shows. He pulled out a folder, my father and his folders, containing market analyses, startup costs, and projected returns. Drew up a business plan, been working on it in my spare time. Olivia, her hand resting on her now prominent baby bump, leaned forward. This is really good, Richard. You've thought of everything. My mother watched him with unmistakable pride. He's been meeting with a SCORE mentor, that's retired executives who volunteer to help small businesses. Just exploring options at this point, my father said, tempering expectations in his characteristic way. Might not happen for a year or two. Still, it's a solid plan, I said, scanning the financial projections. Have you thought about funding? Savings. Mostly. Maybe a small business loan. He hesitated. Actually, I wondered if you might look it over. From an investment perspective. Tell me if I'm missing anything. The request, his willingness to seek my input, to value my expertise, represented how far we'd come. I'd be honored, I told him. And I might have some contacts who'd be interested in something like this. My father's business plan review turned into a larger conversation about family financial planning. With the baby coming and both my parents entering a new phase of life, it seemed natural to think about how our resources could work together for everyone's benefit. One July weekend, I invited my father to join me for coffee at a local shop that had become my weekend thinking spot. The owner, Ellie, knew us both by name and had our usual orders ready as we settled into a corner table. So, my father said, stirring his black coffee. What's this mysterious meeting about? I slid a document across the table. I've been working on something, a proposal. He put on his reading glasses, a concession to age he'd only recently accepted, and studied the paper. Mason Family Investment Group, he read. LLC formation, joint venture. What exactly am I looking at here? A partnership, I explained. You, me, Mom, Olivia, pooling some resources to invest in real estate together, starting with a multi-unit property I found near Vanderbilt. His eyebrows rose. You want to go into business with your old man? I want to combine our strengths, my capital and tech industry connections, your hands-on management experience and local market knowledge. I leaned forward. Plus, it could be the foundation for that consulting business you're planning. Give you actual case studies to show clients. He studied the proposal more carefully, asking pointed questions about liability protection, profit distribution, and decision-making authority. I'd anticipated most of his concerns and built solutions into the structure. For the rest, we brainstormed together, refining the concept in real time. By our third cup of coffee, he was fully engaged, suggesting modifications and improvements with growing enthusiasm. This could work, he admitted, not just financially, but as a way to build something together. Something for the next generation, too. He nodded toward my phone, which displayed a new sonogram image as its lock screen. That's what I was thinking. I hesitated, then added, and it feels right somehow. Coming full circle. How do you mean? When I left for California, the fundamental disagreement between us was about how to build security. You believed in the stability of the mill, the company that had always been there. I believed in creating something new, taking risks for bigger rewards. He nodded slowly. And we were both right. And both wrong. Exactly. The mill wasn't as secure as you thought. And the tech world isn't as simple a path as I made it sound. But together, your practical experience, my market access, we could build something more resilient than either approach alone. My father extended his hand across the table. Partners, then. I shook it, feeling the calluses earned from decades of work both at the mill and in his new life. Partners. The Mason Family Investment Group became official 3 weeks later, with all 4 of us as managing members. My mother surprised everyone with her acumen for analyzing potential tenant demographics, a skill developed through years of community involvement. Olivia contributed her design expertise, helping us understand how to maximize property appeal while controlling renovation costs. Our first acquisition, an 8-unit apartment building near campus, closed in early August. My father personally oversaw the modest renovations, hiring and managing the contractors with a precision that kept us under budget and ahead of schedule. By September, all units were rented at rates that exceeded our projections. Not bad for our first venture, he said as we walked through the completed property. Already have ideas for the next one. Let's get this one stabilized first, I cautioned, and I'm a little busy with another project at the moment. The other project arrived at 3:17 a.m. on August 22nd. Emma Grace Mason, 7 pounds, 4 ounces, with a powerful set of lungs and a full head of dark hair. My father was the first person I called from the hospital, his voice groggy with sleep until the news registered, and he became instantly alert. A girl? Everyone's okay? We'll be right there. My parents arrived within the hour, my mother bearing a hand-knitted blanket, my father carrying the completed crib, disassembled for transport, in the back of his truck. Thought you might want to set it up today, he explained, for when you bring her home. Emma transformed all of us, but perhaps none more visibly than my father. The man who had once been so rigid, so certain of the one right way to live, became putty in the hands of his granddaughter. He held her with a tenderness I'd rarely seen, speaking to her in soft tones about everything from the weather to the stock market. She understands more than you think, he insisted when I teased him about explaining property tax assessments to a newborn. One evening when Emma was about 2 months old, I came home from the office to find my father sitting in the nursery rocking chair, the baby asleep on his chest. He put a finger to his lips as I entered. Just got her down, he whispered. Olivia's taking a nap too. Thought I'd let them both rest. I nodded, taking in the scene, my father's large, work-roughened hands cradling my daughter's tiny form, her complete trust in his protection. Something inside me shifted, a perspective clicking into place. What? He asked, noticing my expression. I just realized something, I said quietly. Everything that happened, even the hard parts, the arguments, the years not speaking, they led us here. To this moment. He considered this, his eyes on Emma's sleeping face. You mean if I hadn't been so stubborn about the mill, if you hadn't left for California? If the mill hadn't closed? If you hadn't needed a place to stay? If I hadn't had that third house? I shook my head, marveling at the chain of events. Every decision, good and bad, created this. My father gently adjusted Emma's position as she stirred. Life doesn't follow a straight line, does it? More like, he gestured vaguely with his free hand, a river finding its way around obstacles. That's surprisingly poetic coming from you, Dad. He smiled slightly. Your mother's book club has been reading poetry lately. Some of it sticks. We sat in comfortable silence, listening to Emma's soft breathing. You know, my father said eventually, when I told you that you'd never make it in the real world, I thought I knew what the real world was. Turns out it's bigger and more complicated than I understood. For all of us, I agreed. I was so sure. I had it all figured out at 21. The arrogance of youth. He chuckled softly. But you weren't entirely wrong. Your generation saw changes coming that mine couldn't imagine. And your generation understood fundamentals that mine sometimes overlooks. He nodded. That's why this works now, the business, the family. Because we're each bringing different pieces to the table. Emma stirred again, making the little grunting sounds that usually preceded waking. My father adjusted his hold, gently, patting her back in a rhythm that settled her immediately. You're good at that, I observed. Had some practice. His eyes met mine. And I'm getting a second chance to do better. The acknowledgement that perhaps he had regrets about his approach to fatherhood was as close to an apology as he would likely ever come. But it was enough. More than enough. I think you're doing just fine, I told him. Outside, the Nashville evening was settling in, golden light filtering through the nursery curtains. In the distance, I could hear the faint sounds of music from a neighbor's porch, guitar and voices blending in harmony. My father hummed along softly, an old country tune I remembered from childhood road trips. Watching him with Emma, I realized that success takes forms we can't always predict. Sometimes it looks like professional achievements and financial security. Sometimes it looks like healing old wounds and building new bridges. And sometimes, perhaps most importantly, it looks like sitting quietly in a nursery with family, holding the future in your arms, connected to both past and present. The real world, it turns out, is wherever we choose to build it. Together. The seasons turned in Nashville, marking the passage of time through Emma's first year. Her first smile, first laugh, first tentative steps holding on to the coffee table. Our home filled with the chaos and joy of parenthood, a whirlwind that somehow made the days both crawl and fly. The Mason Family Investment Group grew alongside Emma. By her first birthday, we had acquired 3 properties and were exploring a fourth, a mixed-use building downtown with retail space on the ground floor and apartments above. My father had become the operational heart of our business, managing renovations, screening tenants, and developing systems that kept everything running smoothly. He's found his second act, my mother observed one afternoon as we watched him, on the back patio, showing Emma how to water plants with a tiny watering can. I haven't seen him this energized since his 30s. Has he mentioned the consulting business lately? I asked. She smiled. He's been drafting a curriculum, thinks he might offer workshops for people interested in small-scale property investment. For regular folks, he says, the phrase captured. Exactly what made my father's perspective valuable. While I thought in terms of portfolio diversification and ROI analysis, he understood the practical concerns of regular folks, people who might have a modest inheritance or retirement package, and wanted to invest it wisely, but were intimidated by real estate. Our company's Nashville office was flourishing as well. We'd moved into the permanent space, a beautifully renovated former textile warehouse, and grown to a team of 45. The culture we'd built balanced Silicon Valley innovation with Nashville's more relationship-focused business approach. Our client list included not just tech companies, but healthcare providers, music industry players, and education startups. Janet, my boss, had visited from San Francisco 6 months after we opened. You've created something special here, she said as we toured the facility. Different from our other offices, but still recognizably us. Her approval meant more than I'd expected. Olivia had found her rhythm too, working 3 days a week in her company's office and 2 from home. She'd been promoted to senior design director, responsible for their southeastern client portfolio. The balance of career and family that had once seemed theoretical now took practical shape in our daily routines. Morning handoffs, coordinated. Calendars, occasional chaotic moments when plans fell apart, and the steady presence of my parents as our safety net. We couldn't do this without them, Olivia acknowledged one evening after my mother had stepped in when both of us had simultaneous work emergencies. Having family nearby changes everything. It did, and not just for childcare. Having rebuilt my relationship with my father, I found myself seeking his counsel on matters I never would have imagined discussing with him before. Business strategies, leadership challenges, even politics. His perspective, shaped by different experiences than mine, often illuminated angles I'd overlooked. On Emma's first birthday, we hosted a small celebration in our backyard. My father had built her a custom playhouse, a miniature craftsman that matched our home, with working windows and a tiny front porch. It was exquisite, capturing both his craftsmanship and his love for his granddaughter. This must have taken months, I marveled, examining the detailed trim work. Started it back in winter, he acknowledged. Worked on it evenings and weekends. It's a masterpiece, Dad, he shrugged, but I could see the pleasure my praise gave him. Just wanted her to have something special, something that would last. Later, as the party wound down and Emma napped exhausted from excitement, I found my father sitting alone on the porch swing, nursing a beer and gazing thoughtfully at the playhouse. "Penny for your thoughts," I said, joining him. He took a pull from his bottle before answering. "Just thinking about legacy. What we leave behind." It wasn't a topic we'd discussed before. What brought this on? "Milestone birthday coming up," he admitted. 65 next month. "Retirement age," I noted. "Though I can't imagine you retiring now." He snorted. "No interest in retirement. Not the traditional kind, anyway." He gestured toward the investment portfolios we'd discussed earlier. "But it does make a man reflective about what matters in the end." I waited, letting him gather his thoughts. "When I was your age," he continued, "I measured success by stability, providing for my family, job security." He shook his head. "Then the mill closed, and I had to rethink everything." "You've built something new," I reminded him. "Something impressive." "Not just me. We, all of us, built it together." His gaze found mine. "That's what I'm realizing about legacy. It's not what you leave to people. It's what you build with them while you're here." The insight resonated, capturing something I'd been feeling but hadn't articulated. "Like the playhouse," I suggested. "Something you created that Emma will enjoy for years, but also something you experienced making." "Exactly." He nodded toward our investment portfolios. "Or these properties. They'll have value someday for Emma, sure. But the real value is in building them together now. The partnership." We sat in companionable silence, watching the evening light play across the yard. From inside came the sound of women's laughter, Olivia and my mother cleaning up from the party, their friendship having deepened into something like mother and daughter. "I have a proposition," my father said eventually. "About the business." "I'm listening." "I want to take the lead on the educational component we've discussed. Develop those workshops for first-time investors. Maybe create an online course eventually." It was an area we'd explored but hadn't prioritized, using our expertise to help others learn property investment on a modest scale. "That fits perfectly with your consulting business idea." "They complement each other," he agreed. "And I've been thinking about structure. If we set up the educational arm as its own entity, but connected to the main company." He outlined his vision with the clarity and precision I'd come to expect from him. It was thoughtful, practical, and rooted in his genuine desire to help people like his former self, individuals facing career disruption or retirement with limited options. I'd need to step back from day-to-day property management, he concluded. Train someone else to take over that role. We can hire for that, I assured him. This is more important. It's using your unique experience. He nodded, satisfied. One more thing. I'd like to use my story, our story, as part of the teaching, the journey from the mill closing to now. The request touched me unexpectedly. You want to talk about me leaving for California? The arguments? The whole arc, he confirmed. The conflict, yes, but also the reconciliation, the partnership we built afterward. He looked slightly embarrassed. People connect with stories, and ours has a pretty compelling narrative. I thought about it, my proud private father sharing our family struggles as a teaching tool. It represented a vulnerability I'd rarely seen from him. If you think it will help people, I'm all for it. His expression lightened. Good. I've already drafted the first module. Of course he had. The educational venture launched 3 months later under the name Real Foundation, Property Investment for Real People. My father led small workshops at first, testing his curriculum with groups of 10 to 15 participants, factory, workers facing plant closures, teachers nearing retirement, young couples looking to build wealth outside traditional pathways. His approach combined practical knowledge with genuine empathy for their situations. He wasn't selling get-rich-quick schemes or promising unrealistic returns. Instead, he offered a roadmap for building modest but sustainable wealth through careful property investment. And as he'd predicted, our family story, from confrontation to collaboration, provided an emotional core that resonated with participants. The workshops quickly developed a waiting list. Local news featured the program in a segment about innovative approaches to financial education. A regional business magazine interviewed my father, highlighting his journey from steel mill supervisor to real estate entrepreneur in an article titled Second Acts, Reinvention in the Modern Economy. Not bad for a guy who once said the internet was just a fad, my mother teased him after the magazine hit newsstands. His education work complemented our investment business perfectly. Many workshop graduates became clients of Mason Family Investment Group, pooling resources to make joint purchases or engaging us as property managers. We expanded to accommodate the growth, hiring 2 assistant property managers and an administrative coordinator. As Emma approached her 2nd birthday, Olivia and I began discussing a sibling. The conversation coincided with another development, a potential expansion of our company's Nashville office to include a research division focused on clean energy applications. They want me to lead it, I told Olivia one night after Emma was asleep. It would mean more responsibility, more staff. More hours? She asked, the practical concern of a working parent. Initially, yes, but also more flexibility to structure. The team how I want. Build in the values that matter to us. She considered this, tucking her legs beneath her on the sofa. Including family-friendly policies? Especially those. Parental leave, flexible scheduling, childcare support. I took her hand. I want to create the kind of workplace I wish existed when we were starting out. The kind that recognizes people have full lives outside the office. Her smile told me she approved. And the timing with potentially having another baby? Not ideal in the short term, I admitted, but better in the long run. I'd be establishing expectations from the beginning. 2 weeks later, the pregnancy test confirmed what we'd begun to suspect. Our 2nd child would arrive in early spring. When we shared the news with my parents over Sunday dinner, my father immediately began sketching ideas for converting the home office into a nursery. My mother started a new knitting project that same evening. Their enthusiasm warmed me in a way I couldn't quite articulate. This continuation of family, the weaving of new threads into our shared tapestry. Later that week, my father called with excitement in his voice. Just got off the phone with an editor from Henderson Publishing. They want me to write a book. A book? About property investment? Based on the workshop curriculum, yes, but expanded to include more personal stories, more about building family, wealth across generations. His voice held wonder. They found me through the magazine article, said my approach is unique, practical wisdom instead of flashy promises. Dad, that's incredible. Never thought I'd be an author, he admitted. Your mother's the reader in the family. She'll help you get the words right, I assured him, knowing my mother's editorial eye from her years in the book club. This is perfect for you. And it was. The book project channeled my father's hard-earned wisdom into a form that could reach beyond Nashville, beyond the workshops. It wasn't just a business opportunity, though the advance was respectable, but a way to extend his legacy, to share what he'd learned through decades of work and his remarkable midlife reinvention. The next year unfolded in a beautiful chaos. The research division launched successfully. Our son, Lucas Richard Mason, arrived 2 weeks early but perfectly healthy. My father completed his manuscript and began working with an editor. The investment group acquired 2 more properties, bringing our portfolio to 7 holdings with healthy cash flow. Through it all, our extended family provided the foundation that made everything possible. My parents taking Emma for special days when Olivia and I needed time with the newborn. All of us pitching in during busy periods, celebrating successes, and troubleshooting challenges together. On a crisp autumn evening, 3 years to the day since we'd moved to Nashville, we gathered for dinner at my parents' house, our original Nashville property that was now undeniably theirs, transformed by their touches into a warm and welcoming home. My father had smoked a brisket, a skill he'd perfected since moving south. My mother had prepared all the traditional sides. The kids, Emma, now an energetic 3-year-old, Lucas, a curious crawler, added joyful chaos to the occasion. After dinner, my father called for our attention, raising his glass in a toast. 3 years ago today, we started a new chapter, Tyler, and Olivia took a chance on Nashville, on us. He glanced at my mother, who smiled encouragingly. Some of you know I've finished the book. What you don't know is that I've dedicated it to my son. He handed me a package wrapped in simple brown paper. Inside was a bound manuscript proof of Building Real Wealth, a Family Guide to Property Investment by Richard Mason. I opened to the dedication page and read, To my son Tyler, who taught me that success comes in many forms, that security can be built on innovation as well as tradition, and that the greatest investments we make are in the people we love. You didn't just make it in the real world. You helped redefine it for all of us. The words blurred as unexpected tears filled my eyes. My father, stoic, practical, emotion-averse, had put into writing the journey we'd traveled together. The recognition of how far we'd come from that angry confrontation in our Ohio kitchen 7 years ago. Dad, I don't know what to say. He clasped my shoulder. You don't need to say anything. Just keep doing what you're doing, building something that matters. Later, as the evening wound down and the children grew sleepy, I found myself standing, with my father on his back patio, looking up at the Nashville sky. The city glowed on the horizon, a reminder of the larger world beyond our family circle. Remember when you said I'd never make it in the real world? I asked, the question free of any bitterness now. He chuckled. Not my finest moment, but it led us here somehow, through all the twists and turns. Life's like that, he observed. Rarely goes where you expect. Would you change anything, if you could go back? He considered this carefully. I'd have listened better, maybe. Been less certain I had all the answers. A pause. But the journey itself? No, it brought us here. Here was more than just Nashville, more than the houses and business we'd built. It was this relationship, transformed from conflict to collaboration. This family, extended and strengthened through challenge and change. This understanding that making it meant something richer and more complex than either of us had imagined in our earlier certainties. As if reading my thoughts, my father said, "You know what I've learned writing this book? Success isn't a destination. It's a process, a relationship with the world and the people in it." Emma's laughter drifted from inside the house, where Olivia was reading a bedtime story. Lucas's babbling joined in, the soundtrack of our continuing story. "I think," I said, "we're both making it just fine." My father smiled, the lines around his eyes crinkling with genuine joy. "Better than fine, son. Better than fine." Above us, the stars emerged one by one, witnessing this moment of quiet understanding between generations. Behind us, the warm light of home beckoned, illuminating the path forward, not a straight line but a winding journey, richer for its unexpected turns. The real world, it turns out, is big enough for all our versions of success. And the greatest achievement isn't proving someone wrong, but finding the courage to build something right. Together. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.